You're the one on your team thinking 3 years ahead, and nobody's following you there yet. The reason your team isn't thinking long-term isn't that they can't. It's that foresight has never been introduced in a way that makes it feel useful to them. In this video, I'm going to give you the first 4 moves that make that introduction work. You're trying to shift one thing: the ratio of time your organization spends reacting versus anticipating. Right now, that ratio is almost entirely weighed towards reaction. Something happens, you respond. The future keeps arriving as a surprise. What you're building is just enough peripheral vision that what's coming gets asked before it becomes, "How did we miss that?" Keep that as your North Star. It will anchor every move I'm about to walk you through. The first mistake kills most attempts before they start, and if you make it, nothing else in this video will work for you. Most people introduce foresight by leading with a concept. They schedule a session called Future Thinking Workshop or send around an article on scenario planning, and then they wait for something to shift. But nothing shifts, because abstract ideas don't create urgency. They create polite nodding. The moment you frame foresight as a topic, something to learn about rather than something to use, you've already lost the room. People engage with decisions they're already inside, they're grappling with, not with concepts they're being asked to care about. So don't start with foresight as a topic. Start with a decision that's already on the table, something your organization or your team is actively wrestling with, and apply a foresight lens to it in real time. Take it into a room and ask, what are we assuming about the future that this decision depends on? What would have to be true in 3 years for this to look like the right call? What would have to be true for it to look catastrophically wrong? You're not running a foresight session. You're asking better questions about a decision people already care about. That's the difference between a workshop nobody remembers and a conversation that changes how a team thinks. The question is, what happens after that conversation ends? The second move is what separates teams that actually develop foresight from the ones that just talk about it once and then move on. And it's simpler than you think. You've probably already tried something. A session, an away day, maybe a facilitator brought in to run a futures workshop. And in the room it worked. People engaged. The conversation felt different. You left thinking something had shifted. But 6 weeks later, nothing had changed. Because the problem with event-driven or one-off foresight isn't that it's wrong. It's that it feels enough like progress to stop you building something that actually lasts. One good session creates the impression of movement without creating the infrastructure for it, or the habit. And teams that rely on events or one-off work to do the work of culture never quite understand why the culture never changes. The simplest version of a habit: add 5 minutes to one existing meeting each week where someone shares a signal, something they've noticed that feels relevant to where your industry is heading. A shift in customer behavior, a competitor doing something unexpected, a technology gaining traction you haven't accounted for yet. Rotate who brings it. Keep it lightweight. No formal analysis is required. What you're building with that 5 minutes isn't just foresight, it's a habit. And habits held consistently are how cultures change. The teams that do this develop a kind of collective peripheral vision. The ones that don't keep getting surprised. But rhythm or habit alone won't get people to show up with the right level of urgency. For that, something has to feel real. This third move is the one most people skip because it feels uncomfortable. Don't skip it. It's the one that makes everything else land. When most leaders try to make the case for foresight, they make it theoretically. They explain the concept, share the research, describe what good looks like. It's logical, it's well-intentioned, and it almost never moves anyone. Because logic doesn't create urgency. Felt experience does. You can't argue someone into caring about the future, but you can remind them of a moment when not thinking ahead already cost them something. Every organization has that moment. A competitor who moved faster. A market shift they saw coming but didn't act on. A decision that looked right at the time and aged badly. That moment is sitting in the room with you. Most leaders walk past it. Use it, not to assign blame, that's not the point. Ask the room, what would we have needed to see earlier to have been better prepared? What signals were there that we weren't paying attention to? What assumptions were we holding that turned out to be wrong? That conversation does something no amount of foresight theory can do. It makes the cost of not thinking ahead feel real. And once people feel that cost, not just understand intellectually, but feel it, the case for doing something different makes itself. And this is where most people throw away everything they've just built. Most people try to convince the skeptics first. It feels like the right instinct. If you can win over the most resistant voices, surely everyone else follows. So you spend your energy in the hardest rooms, making the most careful arguments, chasing the people least likely to move. It rarely works. And it's exhausting, because skeptics don't change their minds because of better arguments. They change when they see something working that they can no longer ignore. Trying to convince them before you have proof of concept is like trying to sell a product that doesn't exist yet. Instead, find the 2 or 3 people in your organization who are already naturally curious about the future. The ones who are always reading widely, always asking what's coming, always slightly restless with the status quo. Start with them. Build something small together. Create a proof of concept. It's much easier to expand something that's working than to argue theoretically for something that doesn't exist yet. Here's the truth about this. Changing how an organization thinks is slow work. It happens because one person decides to keep showing up with a longer view, consistently, patiently, without needing immediate validation. Build your proof of concept first. Let the skeptics come to you. If you felt alone with this at the start of this video, if you can see the shift forming and can't get anyone around you to care, you don't have a perception problem. You have a translation problem. And translation is a skill. It's learnable, it's repeatable, and the 4 moves in this video are where you start. You won't change your team or your organization overnight, but you will change the conversation. And changed conversations held consistently are how cultures move. So keep showing up with the longer view. Keep asking the questions nobody else is asking. The moment something happens that they didn't see coming, and you did, everything changes. And that moment will come. The question is whether you've already built the conditions for your team to be ready for this moment. Because the decisions that shape that readiness, most of them are already being made, right now, in rooms where nobody has thought to ask what the future looks like. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly what those decisions look like, why they feel completely rational in the moment, and what you can do differently before the future arrives and makes the answer obvious.